You know, usually when we talk about a diagnostic tool, there's this expectation of like absolute precision,
Right.
like a mechanic plugging a computer into your car. The screen throws an error code, the mechanic points to an oxygen sensor and says, there it is, swap it out, and the check engine light goes away.
I mean, it's highly satisfying because it's binary. The machine is broken, you find the exact point of failure, you replace the part, and, you're back on the road.
Exactly. It's comforting.
Yeah, having a problem that is visible and easily categorized is a huge relief.
But then you step into the world of human behavior.
Oh, yeah, that's different.
Right. You look at our internal lives, our spiritual growth, our relationships, and suddenly that diagnostic computer is totally useless.
Yeah.
We're dealing with this landscape of repeating patterns, stubborn habits, and, well, self-sabotage that is honestly just incredibly murky.
It is the absolute definition of diagnostic muddy waters. I mean, we can clearly see that our lives are producing the wrong results. Anxiety, division, burnout. But we are remarkably adept at refusing to see the underlying error code causing it.
Yeah.
We just keep driving with the check engine light flashing.
So that's our mission today. We are looking at a text that acts like a flawless diagnostic scanner for the human soul. Today's deep dive is exploring the ancient text of Isaiah chapter 9 alongside a modern framework that breaks down its real-world implications for you right now.
It's a really powerful combination.
It is. And we're going to look at two distinct themes in this text. First, a profound, logic-defying message of hope and light. But that is immediately followed by a bizarre psychological phenomenon.
Yeah, the autopsy of human pride.
Exactly. Our relentless tendency to, double down on our own destruction.
The contrast is what makes this so incredibly powerful. I mean, you can't truly grasp the gravity of the diagnostic warning in the second half until you understand the radical nature of the hope presented right at the beginning.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start right there with this imagery of light breaking into absolute darkness.
Right.
The text talks about specific regions, the lands of Zebulun, Naphtali, and Galilee, that were completely trapped in the shadow of death. Historically, these weren't just like random spots on a map, were they?
Not at all. If you look at the geography of the ancient Near East, Zebulun and Naphtali were essentially the buffer states.
Buffer states.
Yeah, they were situated in the north.
Mhm.
So whenever a massive empire like Assyria decided to march down and conquer, these territories were the speed bumps.
Wow.
They absorbed the very first wave of trauma, invasion, and devastation.
So when the text says they were walking in darkness and the shadow of death, it's not just a poetic metaphor for being sad.
No, it's literal.
They lived with the generational PTSD of being the invasion route, just a constant state of hypervigilance and oppression.
What's fascinating here is that into that specific localized nightmare, the text says these people have suddenly seen a great light.
Right.
It describes the breaking of the yoke of their burden and the rod of their oppressor, but it frames this liberation by comparing it to something highly specific, the historical day of Midian.
Which, if you dig into the history there, wasn't just a standard military victory. This is a reference to the story of Gideon, where an army of just 300 men defeated an absolute swarm of thousands of invaders.
Right, an impossible underdog story.
Yeah. So why reference Midian?
Because the author is using this specific historical anchor to tell the reader that the incoming rescue won't be some, strategic, incremental improvement. It's not about negotiating a slightly better peace treaty.
Way bigger than that.
Exactly. It is going to be a radical, logic-defying intervention, a rescue that relies entirely on divine power, not human effort or military strategy.
And the text shifts from the liberation to the source of it, saying this happens because a child is born who will shoulder the government. And it gives these massive titles: Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace.
Let's look closely at those titles, particularly Wonderful Counselor and Prince of Peace, because this represents a fundamental shift in how leadership operates.
How so?
Well, a dictator issues, demands, and threatens violence if you fail. But a counselor stabilizes.
Right.
A counselor guides, diagnoses the root issue, and restores the individual. This is a leadership model designed to produce profound, sustainable peace rather than chaotic compliance.
I get the appeal of that, but if I can introduce a modern analogy here, it actually brings up a bit of friction for me.
Okay, let's hear it.
Think of this sudden arrival of light and direction, like a GPS recalculating. Let's say you've been driving for 80 miles in completely the wrong direction. You are lost, you're frustrated, the roads are terrible.
We've all been there.
Right? And suddenly the GPS locks onto a satellite signal It chimes, the screen lights up, and it shows you the exact clear route to get home. The clarity is undeniably there. But just because I can see the new route doesn't mean I actually want to take it. Taking it requires making a U-turn. It requires admitting to everyone in the car that I was completely wrong for the last 2 hours.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
So does the application guide we're looking at address the friction between getting clarity and actually moving?
It hits that exact friction point head on. The framework is unflinching about this. Clarity without movement is just informed misery.
Informed misery. Wow.
Yeah. An opportunity for change shows up.
Yeah.
GPS gives you the route, but you are the one who has to turn the steering wheel. Seeing the way out of the dark doesn't help you at all if your pride prevents you from taking the path.
You can see the path, but you still have to swallow your pride and put one foot in front of the other.
Because real leadership, even from a wonderful counselor, brings direction, not a magic teleportation device. The framework notes that a shift from darkness to light becomes possible, but your life does not automatically transform if you remain passive or stubborn. You cannot stay in old destructive patterns just because they are familiar to you. When the light turns on, movement matters.
Which brings us to that really bizarre psychological phenomenon.
Yes.
The text moves from this beautiful promise of light into a brutal reality check about human behavior. When everything starts falling apart for these ancient people, their response isn't to reassess, they double down.
This is where the diagnostic scanner really starts revealing our internal error codes.
Yeah, the text describes Israel facing massive setbacks. They have adversaries coming at them from all sides. The Syrians are attacking from the front, the Philistines from behind, devouring them with open mouth.
A total systemic collapse.
Exactly. But instead of pausing, instead of consulting that wonderful counselor, the people respond with this bold declaration. They say, the bricks are fallen down, but we will build with hewn stones. The sycamores are cut down, but we will change them into cedars.
It sounds incredibly triumphant on the surface, doesn't it?
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because when I read that, my modern sensibilities really push back. My brain immediately thinks, wow, what grit. What an incredible display of resilience.
Right, the whole bootstrap mentality.
Yeah. They get knocked down, their cheap brick houses collapse, their basic sycamore wood is destroyed, and they essentially say, fine, we're going to build back better. We're going to use carved stone and premium cedar wood. In today's culture, we applaud that. We make motivational posters out of that kind of hustle. So why is this framed by the text as a catastrophic display of arrogance?
Because it's the illusion of resilience masking a deep psychological trap.
Okay, explain that.
What we're looking at here is a classic case of cognitive dissonance combined with the sunk cost fallacy. The people are experiencing the direct, painful consequences of living outside of God's design. Their society is collapsing because their foundation is rotten.
Right.
But instead of admitting the foundation is the problem, they blame the building materials.
So they think, we just didn't work hard enough. We just didn't use heavy enough stone.
Precisely. They are rushing to rebuild without a single moment of self-reflection. The application guide points out the physics of this.
Which are?
If your brick house fell down because you built it in a sinkhole, and you built it there, against the express advice of your counselor, building a heavier, more expensive stone house in the exact same sinkhole isn't resilience.
No, it's just going to sink faster.
It is pure arrogance. Rebuilding your life without internal correction just guarantees you will repeat the exact same problem. Only next time, because you used heavier stones, the collapse is going to cause a lot more damage.
Think about how this applies to you listening right now. You might experience a massive, painful setback in your life.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a blown career opportunity, a failed startup, a toxic relationship that finally implodes, or, a financial disaster. This framework suggests that if you don't let the feedback of that failure correct your underlying mindset, all your external efforts to hustle harder are totally useless.
Absolutely useless.
If you just jump into a new relationship acting the exact same way, or start a new business with the same toxic management style, you are just building with hewn stones in a sinkhole.
Growth requires internal change, not just external effort. Working twice as hard in the wrong direction is the ultimate self-sabotage.
Yeah.
The text actually includes this chilling refrain. Despite all this destruction, it says, his anger is not turned away, but his hand is stretched out still. The diagnostic warning signs are still flashing red on the dashboard because the root cause hasn't been addressed.
Man, humans just find it significantly easier to work themselves to exhaustion than to simply admit they were wrong.
Every single time.
Which leads to a crucial question. If the foundation of a society, or even just an individual life, is crumbling, who are the architects drawing up these terrible blueprints?
Right. Who's in charge?
Yeah, who is actively telling everyone to keep building in the sinkhole? This moves the text into an intense warning about toxic leadership and the contagion of bad advice.
And the mechanics of how this society breaks down are devastatingly relevant to the systems we live in today.
The text described how the people absolutely refused to seek the Lord, even after being struck down. Because of this stubborn refusal, it says, God will cut off from Israel head and tail, branch and rush in one day. And it defines these terms explicitly. The head is the ancient and honorable, so the established institutional leaders.
Right.
The tail is defined as the prophet teaching lies. It says point blank. The leaders of this people cause them to err, and they that are led of them are destroyed.
We are looking at a complete corruption of the guidance system. You have the institutional power, the head making arrogant decisions, but worse, you have the tail. In modern terms, these are the populist voices, the influencers, the yes men who validate the bad decisions. They teach lies because the lies are what the people want to hear.
It creates a massive echo chamber where nobody is willing to speak the truth about the subhole.
Exactly. And what happens when a society or a community is trapped in an echo chamber of bad leadership?
The text says wickedness burns like a forest fire, and it results in cannibalization. The tribes of Manasseh and Ephraim turn on each other, and then they both turn against Judah.
To understand the tragedy of that, you have to know the lineage. Manasseh and Ephraim were brothers. They were both sons of Joseph.
Wow.
This isn't just a civil war. This is a family tearing its own throat out.
It makes me think of a highly dysfunctional company or like a poorly managed sports team. The coaching and management are so toxic and the strategy is so deeply flawed that long before they ever face the actual opposing team, the players start brawling in their own locker room.
Right.
They are completely destroying their ability to function because the bad leadership has created an environment of total paranoia and competition.
That is the exact mechanism at play. Bad leadership doesn't just result in poor external metrics. It creates widespread internal instability. When the wonderful counselor is rejected, the voices that fill that vacuum are the tail voices that confuse, distract, and divide. The modern psychological read on this is clear. Internal conflict destroys a system far faster than external pressure.
Because when people turn against each other, the structural integrity of the community just evaporates.
Exactly. You see the external pressure from the Syrians and Philistines earlier in the text, but by the end, the external enemies don't even need to do anything. Manasseh and Ephraim are eating each other alive.
It's so tragic.
Unity creates strengths, but division guarantees collapse. And the cycle presented here is painfully rigid. There is a warning. There is a consequence.
Right.
But then the leadership lies to the people about why the consequence happened, so there is no adjustment. The cycle repeats. Because the leadership isolates the people from reality, they never reach that point of vital self-reflection. They just keep blaming each other.
So if we are looking at this ancient diagnostic report, we see the trap of pride, we see the sunk cost fallacy of building heavier houses in sinkholes, and we see the absolute contagion of bad leadership and internal division. How do we actually stop it? How do we break this cycle of self-sabotage and find that profound peace mentioned at the very start of our deep dive?
Synthesizing the ultimate lesson of this material, we have to recognize that destructive patterns only stop when there's a fundamental shift in behavior and allegiance.
Okay.
This entire framework isn't just a historical curiosity. It is a deep exploration of why humans stay stuck when a better way is perfectly visible. Breaking the cycle requires you to actively choose humility over pride. You have to admit the GPS is right and you are wrong.
I want to bring this directly to the listener's spiritual life right now.
Let's do it.
We've talked a lot about the psychology of this, but how does understanding the cycle of pride and division actually strengthen your trust and relationship with God? Like, what does the application of this look like on a random Tuesday morning?
It comes down to a complete transfer of trust. Strengthening your relationship with God requires understanding that trusting Him means yielding to the wonderful counselor.
Right.
It means looking at your own life and recognizing that you're hewn stones and cedars, your own clever attempts to outsmart your problems, your frantic hustle to outwork your anxiety without changing your heart are never going to save you.
It means you have to stop building in the sinkhole, even if building is what you are, like, really good at.
Yes, Trusting God requires us to stop ignoring the error codes flashing on the dashboard of our lives. When God brings light into your darkness, when that radical clarity finally arrives, trusting Him means having the immense courage to leave your familiar, destructive patterns behind.
Which is terrifying.
It is terrifying to walk away from a structure you spent your whole life building. Even if you know the foundation is rotten, it's your building. But relying on His direction is what actually simplifies our lives. That is what brings the peace we talked about at the beginning.
Because the alternative is just listening to the tale.
Exactly. The alternative is listening to the confusing, misleading voices of a culture that tells you to just hustle harder, to blame your neighbor, to engage in the locker room brawl.
And those voices only lead to internal division and burnout.
Trusting God is, at its core, the ultimate act of humility. It is looking at the wonderful counselor and admitting, my mindset needs to change, my foundation is flawed, and I cannot save myself.
Wow. That brings the whole diagnostic completely full circle. We started with the promise of the Prince of Peace, bringing a brilliant light to people trapped in the shadow of death, a rescue that defies human logic. But the journey from that initial promise to experiencing actual peace isn't passive. We've seen the psychological traps. We've seen how easy it is to fall into the illusion of resilience, to try and fix our lives on our own terms, fueled by pride and the echo chamber of bad advice.
And that's why holding this text up as a mirror is so crucial. It forces a hard pause. It makes us ask ourselves, in our moments of crisis, are we just trying to manipulate our circumstances, or are we allowing God to change our foundation?
Right. Realizing that awareness isn't enough. Having the check engine light identified doesn't fix the car.
What?
Seeing the new route on the GPS is only step one. Actually trusting the wonderful counselor enough to put the car in drive, to follow that light down a new path, even when it requires a massive, humbling U-turn. That is step two. That is where the transformation happens.
It's the profound difference between simply possessing clarity and actually walking in it.
Absolutely. So we leave you with this final provocative thought to mull over. You have the diagnostic report in your hands. You know the profound difference between frantically building with pride in a sinkhole and building on a solid foundation of humility and trust.
Yeah.
The great light has been turned on and the route is visible. How will you apply this information in your life?